our organization has a charity, and we're raising money, and this famous chef, Anna Olson, in our area was doing a tea tasting, and anyway, it was a busy time, and trying to get the event ready. And when I was driving home that night after the event, I rubbed one eye, and I realized I couldn't see right out of my eye, and it scared me, and I didn't know what it was. Just a local optometrist, and she took me in, and I was in her chair for quite a while, and she said, you know, I don't have the proper equipment, but I think you have what's called macular degeneration. But I went back to the optometrist, who helped me get into a specialist, a retina specialist, and that took another 2 weeks. And I was just in sheer panic by that time. And I was in his chair maybe 2 minutes. And he said, I'm very sorry to tell you this, Betty Ann, but you have a disease called macular degeneration. He said, you have two kinds. You have dry and you have wet. And that began my journey. The treatment that was offered was only for the wet eye, and that is the eye that I could barely see out of. And the treatment was, at that point, called Visidyne. And he told me that the treatments were about $2,700 a treatment, and that I'd at least need about 5 or 6 of them. And of course, I panicked, and I said to him, I can't afford that. There's no way. I don't have that kind of money. Well, just the sheer fear of it all, it just came down on me like a ton of bricks, really. My heart started racing, I started crying. I decided that my world, really as I knew it, was coming to an end. And I also thought, if I lose my independence, I just didn't want to go on. I knew I was in deep trouble emotionally, and I remembered through that roar of the doctor telling me that there was an organization called Canadian National Institute for the Blind, CNIB, and I called, and the woman answered the phone, and I told her that I'd just been diagnosed, and I was just wailing. I mean, as soon as I started talking about it, I couldn't stop crying, and she calmed me down. She must have spent about an hour on the phone with me the first time I talked to her. Anyway, she did come the next day, and it was an amazing visit. I went from feeling my life was completely over, as I knew it anyway, and she showed me little techniques. It was amazing. She said, well, sit here and have the light behind your back. And she said, now look at this. Can you see it? And I started to cry. I said, yes, I can see it. And so my employer, I just can't believe they did this, but they had a meeting, and it's a little nonprofit, and they told me that I had worked for 27 years, and they told me that if whatever help I needed, that they would be there for me. And so I was able to take the first treatment. It was Visidyne. I had a terrible reaction to the drug. That scared me. And it didn't restore any of my sight. And then there was another drug, and it had to be injected in your eyes. I think it's Avastin. I didn't receive there was no benefit to that. And then there was this miracle drug that everybody was talking about called Lucentis. And my doctor said, look, nobody's covering this right now. I understand if you don't want to do it. But he said, you know what, if I were you, I'd try. And I talked to my employer, and they said yes, they would cover it. And so I was one of the first in our area to receive the Lucentis treatment. And there was a miracle that happened after all this time, at least 2 years of treatment. All of a sudden I got a 40% change in my vision. I guess I gained 2 lines of sight. But the last Lucentis treatment I had, I've gained another line of sight. And the bleed, he said it was one of the biggest bleeds he had seen. He's treated, and the bleed now is so minuscule he had to use another piece of equipment to see it. So that's just fantastic news. I was sitting in the doctor's office all these years, and I'd meet all these elderly women, and there was one in particular that she just touched my heart so much. And she was crying, and I was crying, and you know, I just thought, I'm getting help, and who's helping others? First of all, I said to my doctor, what can we do about this? And he said, well, maybe you could contact the AMD Alliance, and he gave me the website. The next thing, CNIB had a lobby, and they asked if I would speak out to the reporters about having macular degeneration, and I did. And then I was asked in Ontario, because the great news in Ontario was the government was going to start paying for Lucentis. And it was a great day for all of us. And then the next day we found out that there were restrictions, and my age group and my income group were excluded. And what really hurt me was that I had told my MD's nurse and some other women that they were covered, and to this day they are not covered by that. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and I feel that I would like to be part of that work to ensure that everybody is covered.